Hello, and welcome to another vlog. As you know, Hurricane Dorian recently ravaged the east coast of North America, specifically the Bahamas and parts of the eastern United States. But what you might not know is that the hurricane actually made its way into Atlantic Canada. So, the hurricane made landfall on the southwestern tip of Nova Scotia on September 7th as a Category 1 hurricane, and then it was later upgraded to a Category 2 hurricane. So it brought with it a lot of wind and a lot of rain. There were gusts of up to 100 kilometers an hour and 150 kilometers an hour along the coast, and there was rain up to 150 millimeters in some places. So as you can see, it wasn't your average rainstorm. And there was so much rain, in fact, that we were concerned that our basement was going to flood or our driveway was going to be washed out. But fortunately, neither of those things happened. Now, what the storm did do is it did take our power out on Saturday around 1 p.m., and our power was out until Monday at around 5 p.m., so we were without power for about 52 hours. Unfortunately, there's still some people who don't have power. As of filming this video, there's about 80,000 homes in Nova Scotia that still don't have power. So it was a very bad storm. Now, fortunately, we made the decision to purchase a generator so that we could power some of the necessities, specifically our refrigerator, my lift, and some other appliances. So that was a big help, so I'm very glad that we did that. But again, not everyone had that luxury. And the storm itself didn't do a lot of damage in our yard. It only knocked down one tree, but obviously not everyone was so lucky. For starters, there's the people who live in the Bahamas who were the most affected by the storm, so we're really thinking about those individuals at this time. And then there was the people in North Carolina and, of course, people in other parts of Nova Scotia. The storm took down a lot of trees and a lot of power lines. Some of those trees landed on people's homes or vehicles, people's houses flooded, boats got washed away, and a tower crane even fell down in Halifax despite frequent warnings to take the crane down before the storm. Right, so it was a very devastating storm. And, that's not good. So I'm going to include some links in the description to websites where you can go if you want to know how you can help people affected by Hurricane Dorian, especially the people in the Bahamas, because they're the ones who need it the most. But all this talk about Hurricane Dorian and evacuations got me thinking. Safety is very important for everyone, but it's especially important for people with disabilities because we have additional safety concerns that need to be addressed. So what do people with disabilities do in emergency situations? Anyway, I did some research and I found a website that talks a little bit about safety, specifically for people with disabilities. So I've compiled a few safety tips that I'd like to share with you. And these tips are good for people with disabilities, but really they can benefit anyone, whether you have a disability or not. So the first tip is to be prepared. Basically, by this I mean stock up on all of the supplies that you will need to get yourself through the storm. There's, the typical things, your first aid kit, flares, food, water, blankets, batteries, flashlights, a radio, fire extinguisher, things like that. But it may also be good to stock up on things like medications. So if you take medications, you may want to go to the drugstore prior to the storm and refill those prescriptions and any other materials that you might need. You should have enough supplies to last you at least 72 hours. And the other thing that you should do to prepare is to charge up any devices that you might need during the storm. So I'm not just talking phones, tablets, and computers. I'm also talking about things like medical equipment such as ventilators or assistive devices such as wheelchairs and lifts. Right? These are all things that, it would be good to have fully powered up before the storm because you're going to need them and you don't want them to go dead before you're finished using them. So that's some of the things that you can do to be prepared. But the second tip is to have a plan. Not only should you have a plan of action for all emergencies, there's the main scenarios like fires or floods, but you should also look into more specific scenarios like what happens if the power goes out, what happens if you get snowed in, what happens if someone gets sick or injured, what happens if your wheelchair breaks down, what do you do in those situations? If your wheelchair dies and you need to charge it, you might be able to take it somewhere where there is power and charge it there. But What if you can't? Then what do you do? These are the kinds of things that you need to plan for. Now, I don't expect everyone to know everything. I certainly don't. So one thing that you can do is, if you're not sure what to do in a certain emergency situation, you can go to your local fire department or police department and talk to them and see what they suggest. You can even book a consultation with a physiotherapist or an occupational therapist, because these individuals are experts when it comes to safety, and they probably know about things that you wouldn't even think about in these emergency situations. And part of being prepared is educating yourself and knowing what to do in these situations. So that's the second tip. And then the third tip is to help others. If you're lucky enough to get your power back before everyone else, for example, and you have a lot of supplies left over that you don't need, you may want to think about donating those supplies to charity or to people who need them more than you. Because not only is this the right thing to do, but just because you're lucky this time doesn't mean you're going to be lucky the next time there's an emergency. And if you were in that situation, you'd want people to help you. And part of the reason I include this tip is because I strongly believe that cooperation is crucial to survival. That's part of what's allowed our species to be so successful, is that ability to cooperate and to work together to solve our problems. And hopefully that's going to help us to continue to be successful. Anyway, I'm going to include some links in the description below to some websites where you can learn more about safety, and I encourage you to check those out. Anyway, that's all I wanted to talk about today, so thanks for watching, and see you in a couple weeks.